Welcome to Healing Honeys, the podcast for girls with big dreams trying to balance it all. I'm Louise Rumble, serial entrepreneur, type A overachiever, healing girly, and holistic wellness coach who also once got called the Jesus of modern dating. But let's get one thing straight. My healing era has never been calm. I'm talking savage dating stories, 20 cigarettes a day, daddy issues, an anxious attachment style, and an autoimmune disorder too. Today, I've spent thousands of dollars on healing and therapy, and now I'm here to guide you, love you, and laugh with you as I share my favorite tips, tricks, and rituals that have saved me along the way. With new episodes every Wednesday, expect girl talk, psychology, and the nervous system, as well as love, sex, and dating, wellness, fitness, and a little bit of business and spirituality too. So get in, honey. We are balancing healing, hustling, and life, and the best is yet to come. And if you're looking for ad-free listening or my somatic healing subscription daily devotion, just head over to the show notes. Now, let's get into it. Hi, my honeys. Welcome back to this week's Hot and Healing episode, where I bring you the ultimate weekly dose of wellness, curated for the modern wellness girlies trying to balance healing and hustling. And you can expect everything that's been hot in the world this week, particularly in the world of wellness, but yeah, a bit of everything really. And I'm going to bring you my favorite podcast picks, social clips, article of the week, and just things to help you heal faster. So I'm so happy that you are back here with me. If you are watching on video or on YouTube, you can see that I have my little co-host lying here next to me. Oh, I don't know if you just heard that little squeak when I gave her a stroke, but she is so cute. Sometimes I'm like, how did I rescue a street cat that is now the softest thing in the world? Like, how would she have survived if she hadn't have found me? I don't know. Anyway, I believe that the cat distribution system worked perfectly well on that occasion because she's literally like my soul animal. Oh, I love her so much. Anyway, let's get into it. So I always start these episodes with, how are you really? And this is the question to give you guys permission to ask yourself, how are you really? How has this week really gone for you? And last week I told you that we were thinking about moving to Mexico City, and that move is going ahead. So I'm going to fly to Mexico City next week with my boyfriend, and we're going to start looking at apartments. And honestly, I'm excited. It feels really good. Last week I was like a little bit apprehensive. And then this week I'm like, let's fucking go. I am knee deep in apartment hunting and apartment searching alongside having the craziest week of my life. If you were to look at my Productive Princess Google Calendar time blocked to the extreme, you would be like, girl, how are you fitting in like finding apartments alongside everything? And truthfully, this week has been nuts for me. I've been working easily until like 8, 9, 10, sometimes even 11 each night. But I've also decided that I am just not a morning person. So I've really been shifting my days to starting slower in the morning. I've been going to the gym. I'm back to my weightlifting, my somatic Pilates with daily devotion, back to my morning breath work. And honestly, I've been feeling really good. So I'm aware you can't sustain this pace of life forever, but I definitely think that, I've mentioned before, I'm just so fascinated by resilience and building resilience in the nervous system so you can go at speed without burning out. So that is my update from the week. I'm doing really good. I'm a little bit apprehensive about moving my life and like packing up and trying to maybe buy furniture for an apartment because so many of them are unfurnished. And then I'm also like a little bit apprehensive because once I do that move, I'm then going to go through a London, New York, LA trip, podcast trip, brand trip. There is just so much going on in my life, but this is everything that I've always dreamed of. So I am so grateful for these experiences and I'm just leaning into it. You can't dream of something and then moan when it arrives. I truly believe you can't wish for something and dream for something and manifest something and call it in and meditate on it and then complain when it arrives. Like, that just doesn't work for me. So how am I really this week? I am incredibly busy, but I'm incredibly excited for the future. And it feels so good to be executing this change. So I am good. Now, let's get into what's hot this week. And I think it's obvious that TikTok is what's hot. You know, everyone is talking about it. And with the impending TikTok ban, which was just confirmed by the Supreme Court earlier this week, it seems like everyone is flocking to Red Note, which has been referred to as China's answer to Instagram. And they are seeing a surge in US creators joining the platform. And I'm not really going to get into my thoughts on the TikTok ban. And it is so multifaceted from so many angles. I've been listening to videos about the points around data and privacy and things like that, as well as not being able to control the narrative, or America not being able to control the narrative, and America not being able to fact check in the ways that they can on their own platforms. I'm not really going to get into all of that, but from my perspective, I just think it's really sad. Like, I love TikTok with my whole heart. It 100% has been such a huge source of not only my career kicking off, like my career exploded through TikTok. That I wouldn't be sat here talking to you today probably if it wasn't for TikTok. So I have a deep gratitude for that platform and what they've created. But at the same time, like taking my career out of this, because I'm actually a UK creator, like on the TikTok app. So I'm not going to lose access to it. But from like a creativity standpoint, I've learned so much through TikTok. The content is amazing. The algorithm is amazing. And I'm really sad about this huge change. But what I will say is that I will not be going to Red Note. You know, when Threads was launched, I was like, no, I can't deal with this. My podcast producer was like, you should get on Threads. And I'm like, I can't. I don't have any time. And then Lemonade launched, or whatever it's called. And I was like, I don't even know what that is. No. And now Red Note. And I'm just like, if you're feeling overwhelmed, you are not alone, because I think that we live in a society where everything is so busy. And it gets to that point where even simple tasks like replying to texts can feel overwhelming. And so the thought of adding more into our routine, into this modern woman's matrix of like how many things we have to do and handle on a day-to-day basis, the thought of another social media platform is just like, hell no. And I do think that that is an interesting thing to think about, you know, even though texting back or downloading a new app might be thought of to be small in the sense of like it's small in the grand scheme of life, the pressure and the apprehension and the, you know, feeling of like, oh, I have to do this can actually activate a sense of stress in our nervous system. And if we're already overwhelmed, it can push us into fight or flight, or more importantly, it can often push us into freeze mode. So it's in that freeze mode where we are just like, I can't handle this, you know, the real freeze, the overwhelm, the analysis paralysis, the being very busy in our head, but not being able to like go onto the app store. Like for me, for example, I like half the time don't know what my password is for the app store. And it should be so simple for me to just go and find my password in my locked note, which has my passwords in it. But like sometimes the thought of doing that is just like too big an experience for me to do. And then with how busy life is, I'm like, oh, fuck it. I'll just like do something else. We task jump, right? Particularly if you live with ADHD in any form. If something is not easy, if something is not flowing, if it requires like executive functioning brain power, it's so easy to just be like, oh, I'll just check my inbox instead. You swipe and then you are on to the next. So I always think it's so interesting to understand that if you feel a sense of dread about Red Note, then that is okay. I think a lot of us will be feeling that way. And honestly, you probably won't really be missing out. My personal opinion is that I don't think that is going to become such a huge part of contemporary topical culture as potentially some of the other apps are. But I could be wrong. I do think we're probably going to see more people maybe going to YouTube this year, but let's see. What else is hot this week? Okay, talking of overwhelm and analysis paralysis, Aloe have linked their new Sweet Pink collection this week, where if you are watching on video, you will see me wearing it right now. And it is the cutest pink ever. And what I will say is, I don't think we understand the relief when we find an outfit that we can wear, that we truly feel good in, that is truly easy to pull on, that is easy to pick out, that doesn't make us feel uncomfortable in our body. You know, it's not too tight, like our jeans aren't too tight. It doesn't make us feel shit because we're like, oh, the last time I wore these were looser or baggier. You know, the cycles that we go through in living as women in today's society. And receiving this sweet pink tracksuit from Aloe, which, by the way, this is not an ad. They just sent it to me as a gift, which is so kind of them. But it's made me realize that decision fatigue around what we wear as well is so important. So I started researching into this, and I started to understand that our brains have limited daily energy for making decisions. And Steve Jobs said that he famously wore the same outfit to preserve his mental energy for more significant tasks. And I will say that having worn this like a couple of times this week, when you know what to wear, where it is, and that it feels good, you do actually just like reduce the mental and emotional and the nervous system like power that is required to walk into your closet, to walk into your cupboard. In my case, to walk into a spare bedroom that is like fucking full of clothes and suitcases in the most stressful way. It is the least aesthetic room you will ever see. Living out of a suitcase and traveling often is just not conducive to having a tidy spare room. I just closed the door, very much like Indy Clinton. If you know her, you know. And I'm like, no, I'm just going to pretend that's not happening in there. But what I would say is it's been a really cool part of my week to be like, oh, this really works for me. This feels really good for me. So next week, pick 1, 2, 3 outfits that feel really good for you. Get them clean at the beginning of the week. Clean them on Sunday. Have them ready for the week. You can get up. You can go each day. And I think it might have a good impact on your life and life management. So would love to hear your thoughts on that. And if you guys have anything similar around outfits that are easy, that make you feel good, and if you like to opt for some of the same things on repeat, like I have this week. Now, next, what has been hot on everyone's lips this week is Mark Zuckerberg's comments about masculine energy in the workplace. So if you missed out, Mark Zuckerberg, the CEO of Meta, I believe, don't quote me on that, but I think that that is his position. It might just be founder. I say might just be as if it isn't the biggest company quite literally in the world. He called for, on the Joe Rogan podcast, more masculine energy in corporate culture. And this was in the context of him saying that, yes, he believes that there should be a balance, and yes, that he believes that there should be a time and place for both. But for me, this hit a nerve, and I love being triggered because now, having done so much work, I'm aware that like being triggered just tells me something about me that it has hit a nerve on, rather than it really being about Zuckerberg. He is entitled to whatever decisions or opinions he wants to hold. That is none of my business. But I think the reality is that like for me, this comment is like not a hot comment. And the gender pay gap is still very, very real. And it's not something that I've experienced firsthand because obviously I run my own business, actually multiple businesses. So I am not working and being paid less than a man that is doing the same job. But let me tell you, you guys know I work like a fucking animal. I work so hard. I work so hard. If I was working this hard and I was being paid less than a man, my internal feminine rage that I already hold at the world, at everything, like I find myself being angry and frustrated and irritable often with how much I have going on and how frustrating I find some things are in today's society. I could tell you that that would be worse. I would be raging. Not only would I be raging, I'd probably be like petitioning HR, storming up there, like, you know, being like, what, pay me the fucking same. I honestly don't know what I would do if I was in a situation where a man was being paid more than me for the same job. So that would rage me. And I think with that gender pay gap still persisting and this statistic that female-led businesses, or a business that even has one woman on the founding team, receives 4 times less venture capital funding than male ones. And if you don't know how venture capital funding works, you basically, let's take me with Healing Honeys, for example. I would go to a private equity fund who have a lot of money and they invest it in specific companies with the hope that they will grow and then one day they will make money back on their investment. So you go to these companies and you basically pitch your business. And I would say, this is Healing Honeys. Right now, it's a podcast, but it might turn into a live podcast tour, a live events tour, a studio space, merchandise, whatever. I'm just thinking outside the box here. You know, do you want to invest in my business idea? By me being on that team that would present, or by me leading that team, I would be 4 times less likely to receive funding than a male person or counterpart in the equivalent position. And that for me is just like beyond fucked, because why? I am just as good as any man in this world, if not better, if not more intelligent, if not more self-aware, more empathetic. Like I truly might have issues in some areas of my life, but my competency in the workplace is not one of them. It is the thing that I thrive in best and the thing that I can achieve in the most. So between those stats and him saying we need more masculine energy in the workplace, that just like really got me going in the worst way possible. And then in more of like my world, in terms of being an integrative health practitioner, a holistic wellness coach, really understanding the impact that chronic stress has on our body and how our beautiful female nervous systems are primed and built totally different to a male nervous system and are not made to operate in these worlds designed for male biological rhythms. The man, their biological rhythms are daily, their hormone cycles are daily, whereas ours are monthly. I think I said that in one of the last episodes. So our female biological rhythms, going against them can lead to implications, psychological, physiological, hormone-based, you name it, because functioning in insanely masculine environments and working insanely hard without the resilience in our nervous system, it leads to chronic stress, which I call toxic stress. That impacts our hormonal balance. It impacts our neurotransmitters, our sex hormones. And I don't think it is a surprise, I talk about this all the time, that 80% of autoimmune disorders fall on females. So for me, the thought of him saying we need more masculine energy in the workplace when I already think that businesses are insanely male dominated, they are male founded, they are male led. And I'm in a couple of women in health tech chats, and these conversations are happening regularly, saying how hard women are striving to be taken seriously in the business world, and particularly in the VC world and the corporate world, it is still an uneven battle. So considering that one of my core pillars of who I am as a person is that I believe that toxic stress leads to quite literally every disease under the sun, no, Zuckerberg, I don't think we need more masculine energy in the workplace. And in fact, I'd love to see some more of these male-dominated workplaces actually prioritizing cultures that really are different to how they are functioning now and incorporating more stress-regulating practices in the workplace and through monthly subscriptions, as well as just taking more action when a man is being shit in the workplace. Because you also know that another key point of my work is how emotional suppression also leads to nervous system dysregulation. And I think it's still so hard in so many of these structures and functions to speak up and share our experiences. So no to Mark Zuckerberg this week and his comments on more masculine energy being needed in the workplace. Okay, now talking of what's hot this week and also talking of VCs, one thing that I've noticed this week is the launch of a couple of new podcasts in this space, but also the evolution of podcasts. So talking about VCs and being a woman in business, Maggie Sellers of Hot, Smart, Rich fame is part of my hot drop this week. So she's launched her new podcast, aptly named Hot, Smart, Rich, and she is such a force. I love everything that she stands for because she says that you do not have to choose between being hot, smart, and rich. And she works in this VC space. And I think that her message is so important. And I'm so excited that she has launched her podcast. Hopefully, I will do some sort of collab with her at some point. But another trend that I'm watching quietly that I think is just going to get hotter is that I think we're going to see podcasts evolving into new spaces over the remainder of this year and beyond. Now, you might not have noticed, but Gemma Speg of the Psychology of Your 20s podcast has just launched her second podcast, Mantra, which is a new podcast under a studio called Open Mind. And I believe that they've launched Khloe Kardashian's new podcast. Now, what I thought was so interesting when I was checking out Pave Studios, who's the parent company of Open Mind, and the launch of this new podcast with Gemma, who I love, by the way, is that they are pioneering these more experiential formats with podcasts, and they're launching some around soundscapes and guided relaxations and around horoscopes. And I just think that this is going to be something we are going to see more of in the coming months and years. I think we are going to see the podcast space continue to develop not only into video, I think with Spotify rivaling YouTube in that angle. And for anyone that's like, Louise, why don't you have the video on your podcast? Why do I have to go to YouTube to watch it? There are some limitations at the moment with Spotify, which are that if you are a creator that makes money on your podcast, which obviously I have to because I have to pay my bills and pay my team to edit this podcast that you are listening, then you have to host it through a specific type of platform. And even though they own that platform, you can't have the video coming through Spotify. So anyone that has video on their Spotify are either not making money through it or they are making money on video ads. So it's very complicated behind the scenes, and I've tried everything to work around it. But Spotify are trying to help me out with that, but that is why you need to head over to YouTube to watch the videos associated with healing honeys. But yeah, I think we're going to see Spotify continuing to evolve. I just love Spotify. I just think they are just such a premium listening platform. I've been using them for so many years. But I also think we're going to start to see more of these experiential experiences. And it's not the first time that people have messaged me saying, Louise, you should put your meditations, you should put your somatic healing, your tapping videos, for example, on healing honeys. And obviously that's what I do under my other business, Daily Devotion. But this week I did drop my first ever expansion event. So it's a 10-minute meditation where all you got to do is close your eyes to transition into the version of you that is already waiting for you in the future. So I'm ready for that evolution. I think that's pretty hot, and I'm excited to see where that evolution goes from here. Now, let's talk about what or who is healing this week. And for the first time, America slipped out of the 20 happiest countries in the world. And I'm not going to lie, I was surprised by that. I didn't realize that it was below the top 20. In fact, I'd never really thought about this, but it's basically said that America's slipped because of economic inequality, political polarization, a declining trust in institutions and social connections, and just increased stress from overwork and inadequate support systems. So this got me researching who is the happiest country in the world. And I think I already knew this, but it's Finland. Again, it remains number one on the World Happiness Report alongside other Nordic companies like Denmark, Iceland, and Sweden. And it's thought that this is because they have universal healthcare and education access for all, much stronger social safety nets, a much bigger focus on work-life balance and being outdoors in nature, and a much more trusting relationship with governmental institutions, which of course I can't comment on. I don't really know about that, but I do think it is interesting because I've read a lot about the work-life balance in these Nordic countries and how life is just different over there, which I think is beautiful. So I think it's interesting to see alongside, the American dream of TikTok basically being taken away. And I say that because TikTok was an app that a mum with 6 kids could go and work and then come home and work a second job and be struggling and be exhausted. But then she could start a TikTok and just start talking and be funny or be educational and have a TikTok shop, and she could change her life in quite literally a month. And that for me is reflective of the American dream, like the belief that you can do everything. So it's kind of interesting that that has come out at the same time as this as well. I also know from a huge amount of my research, my study, my training as an integrative health practitioner, there are so many health concerns and conditions and such an insane reliance on pharmaceutical medicine, healthcare challenges, healthcare issues, so many chemicals allowed in American food produce, in American beauty produce that are not allowed in England, that I do think America is going to have to go on its own healing journey to kind of slowly catch up with what is happening in Europe. And don't be triggered by this if you're an American. This is not a direct attack on you. This is just my personal opinion as a health practitioner, that I think it's absolutely nuts that the US allows over 1,700 chemicals in food and cosmetics in the States that are restricted or banned in Europe. And I think we saw that this week, that the FDA finally banned red number 3, which is a petroleum-based dye that's been in US food for over 30 years, despite it being linked to cancer in animal studies, and despite it being in tons of food products that are fed to children, and despite it also being banned nearly over 30 years ago being in skincare products. So they basically said it's not safe enough to go on your skin, but it's okay for you and your kids to eat it. So that's something else that happened this week, and I think that's an awesome step in the right direction. There's a lot more of these that need to happen, in my opinion. And so I would love to see more of like a holistic well-being era take over the United States. And I know that that is unrealistic for so many reasons, but if you're listening to this and you are in the States, keep at it. Keep reading, keep researching, keep talking about it, because you are part of the change. And my biggest audience is the States. So I'm so grateful to be on this journey with you. And you guys know I fucking love you as well. Like I always say, I'm way more American than I am British. I love how you guys hype each other up. There is nothing that you don't believe you can do. And in that sense, the mindset support, the belief in yourself, like I love it. The whole world should have the confidence the self-confidence, the support that I believe that a lot of Americans have. You do not have that in the UK. It's like you should be seen and not heard. You should not celebrate yourself. The business world in America is unbelievable. It's like you got an idea, they're like, yeah, fuck yeah, let's do this. That's the best idea ever. And I love that. In England, everything's so risk averse. Everything is so like, oh, I don't know about that. So yeah, I love you guys. And I just think let's continue this journey together, particularly if you are part of the holistic health world or even the health and wellness world by listening to this podcast. And my final thing around healing this week, whilst we are talking about toxins, is that I watched a video saying that Apple Watch straps have over 10,000 times the amount of PFAs in them than is legally allowed. And that is crazy. PFAs are basically known as like forever chemicals. They're often found in plastics, and they are synthetic compounds that don't break down in the environment or in the body, which is why they're like literally called forever chemicals. And there's quite a lot of information on this. I think we're going to see a ton more of this in the next 5 to 10 years, even about how we have PFAs and plastics in our workout wear, particularly in the crotch, next to our poor little vajayjays. I think much like toxic and non-toxic tampons, I think we're going to see a shift in PFAs, coffee cups, leggings, workout, activewear, you name it. But there are some potential health impacts of PFAs, particularly they interfere with endocrine signaling. What that means is basically, in simple terms, they can disrupt your hormones. They particularly affect your estrogen and thyroid hormones. And we all know that PCOS and a lot of other hormonal issues are rooted in estrogen dominance. They've also been linked to cancer, immune suppression. There is a lot of stuff going out there. And I think what's so important to note and remember is just that our skin is our greatest organ. It covers every part of us. So if we are putting something on our body that is classified as toxic, it's going to be absorbed by our body. And in last week's episode, I discussed about liver, the detoxification pathways, pathway 1, pathway 2, how there are certain things that can make it harder for our body to detox or more for our body to detox. And I think that these PFAs are sort of in that same section of conversation. So if you've got one of those Apple Watches, I don't, I wear a Whoop, but if you've got an Apple Watch, look into it, do your own research, decide how you feel about this, and maybe swap it out for like a cute little chain strap. I've seen a lot of people on Amazon buying super cute straps that they have switched out. So decide if that change works for you. I will also say, I don't know how you guys do it with an Apple Watch. In a way, I would kind of love to have one, but I am so chronically online as it is. My screen time is 9.5 hours on my phone and my laptop at the moment. I literally work nonstop across multiple devices all the time. The actual small moments that I get to myself, like going for coffee with my boyfriend or going to the beach or sitting on the toilet, I don't know what I would do if I had my Apple Watch with me at that point. So yeah, I'd love to hear from you guys, how you actually ever switch off if you have an Apple Watch. Now, as we come into the final section of today's Hot and Healing podcast segment, we're going to talk about the topic, my TikTok topic of the week, and how sad if TikTok disappears. I mean, it's not going to disappear for me, so I'm probably going to keep this segment going, but I might have to find the equivalent on Instagram to be able to share my topic of the week, because as you guys know, this is the podcast segment of an email newsletter that goes out every week, which is the written version of this. If you want to join the email newsletter, you can sign up through the show notes. And I link lots of videos in there, TikToks, the articles that I'm referencing, etc., etc. But I watched this one TikTok and it literally knocked me sideways. So it was this girl basically saying, me after reading someone's comment, I have never felt proud of an achievement, only relieved. And that hit me so fucking hard because it really got me questioning, oh, wow. How do I feel when I hit my goals? And this really got me thinking that, I actually don't have goals. My whole life is just one huge goal of just everything growing and getting better and getting bigger and becoming healthier. And I have very, broad goals in my life, if that makes sense. So I had this moment where I was like, okay, wow, when was the last time that I hit a goal? And did I feel proud of myself or relieved? And I started looking at the questions and the comments on this TikTok in the captions. And some of them are so real, so raw, so vulnerable, so powerful. And I just want you guys to know that you're not alone if you feel like you never truly allow yourself to celebrate or to stop or to pause or to enjoy a moment of achievement. Because for so many of us, like, we don't stop, we don't celebrate ourselves. We just start again onto the next goal, onto the next email, onto the next project, onto the next trip, onto the next plane trip, you know? And I think these comments really, really hit home for me. And they said things like this. Every time I accomplish something, I'm like, oh no, I've tricked them into thinking I deserve this. My achievements never feel like achievements. They just feel like the bare minimum. Someone else also said, I can't celebrate my achievements because in my mind, it is my obligation to achieve them. I don't feel anything but a wave of relief. And someone else said, I experienced relief for 2 seconds that it was finally done. But then I realized I have so much more to do. So I just become numb. And it's always then what's next and upstaging myself. And then this one, which hit home as well. Every time I succeed, I feel like I cheated or I didn't deserve this, like I barely even made it. And that for me hit home so much because I know that sometimes if I have like a really good podcast month, maybe with like 300,000 downloads, or if I have a brand that wants to work with me, even though I've done so much self-work, even though I'm so proud of myself and I have a great self-concept and I've really healed so much internal shame and those beliefs of me being like, deep down, no one likes me, deep down, no one will ever love me. You know, this is what inherent and internal shame is. I still do have moments when I'm like, oh, that was a fluke, or like, I didn't deserve that, or, you know, a brand is going to work with me and they're going to regret it. And this is when I circle back to the things I talk about in the Golden Girl Mindset Masterclass, because that is when we need to be heading back to those 5 core beliefs that I teach you about in that masterclass. So I will start tapping on my collarbone using those unique belief statements. And basically, in the moments that I feel imposter syndrome, I will start to say to myself through the tapping, no, we are not doing this. And I will rewire the opposite of those beliefs back into me. So this was just a really special moment for me this week when I realized that so many of us out there struggle from imposter syndrome, and that really it stems from self-doubt and this fear of failure and this disconnect from ourself and this belief that we are only worthy or we are only enough when we are producing, when we are succeeding, because we live in a capitalist, consumerist society that is based on production and based on consumption. We are not celebrated just for who we are, as we are, just us, no phone, no laptop, no Sephora, no aloe, you know. Strip these things away. We aren't celebrated in this culture for how we connect over the fire at night, or how we hold someone else's baby when they're in need, or how we put our feet on the earth and we are so grateful in that moment for our existence. You know, in that way, we are so disconnected from the ancient wisdom of how beautiful we are just by being us. And instead, we're in this like hyper productive society that really ties our worth to external validation and ties our worth to external accomplishments and achievement, and ultimately keeps us in a loop of striving and striving and striving without ever actually celebrating, because it's always on to the next, more followers to gain, more dating to do, more promotions to get, more money to make. So I really want to do a podcast episode on this. I think I'm going to do a dedicated podcast episode on imposter syndrome in the coming weeks. I also am going to do an episode on aging, anti-aging, and the connection between the gut, skin, even brain axis. I really want to get into all things aging and anti-aging, because I am 36 years old and I feel like I look 28, you know? I have the most expressive forehead in the history of the world. It is so wrinkly when I talk, but when I'm not expressing myself, I'm pretty happy with my skin at this age. And often people ask me, what do you do? What products do you use? And while I do love some products, I believe that the real glow comes from the inside out. So I'm going to share all of that with you and more. But definitely I want to get into this imposter syndrome, because I just think that clip being so viral, I'll link it in the show notes so you can check it out, so you can read the comments. It showed that, wow, this is a pain point, and wow, people are really relating to this. They're really experiencing this. So just know that if you feel that way, you are not alone. Anyway, my angels, my co-host has been particularly unhelpful today. She has slept through the entire episode, but thank you so much for joining me for this week's Hot and Healing newsletter podcast segment. Please DM me. I really want to understand if you guys enjoy this. I'm thinking about whether I should be doing these weekly, whether I should be doing them bi-weekly. I want to know if you want to read it on a blog, if you want to read it on Substack. And I'm also looking for someone who is chronically online, someone who loves wellness, loves TikTok, loves Instagram, loves brands, brand activations. If you have your finger on the pulse and you want to help me research this newsletter, if you want to help me build this newsletter, then I would love to speak with you. And you can email me on louise@thisisopenhouse.com, because circling back to what I said at the beginning of the episode, for the first time in my life, I am getting to a point where I just cannot do everything. And I didn't think that that day would come, but it has come. And so my goals for this year, like I said, my goals are always super broad, but I want to hire really, really fucking hot, smart, creative women who want to create and want to lead the way in building something in their life. So if you would like to talk to me about working with me, please feel free to pitch me what you do, how you think it would help, examples of your work and ideas that you have for Healing Honeys and how we could work together. But that is it from me and my angels. I love you guys so much. This is releasing on a Sunday, so I hope you have a beautiful Sunday. On Sundays, I host my live Sunday sessions in my healing community daily devotion. So if you're listening to this and you're feeling lonely on a Sunday, come over and join us over there, because that is where we do things like live Zooms. We have a community room, a community chat, and you can make new friends. But that is it from me. Everything is linked in the show notes as ever. And I love you guys. Goodbye.